Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Are you sick of capturing photos with blown out highlights and lost shadow details that ruin your shots? Well, fear not. In this video, I'm going to share with you my easy method to help you avoid blown out highlights and crushed shadows for that matter, and achieve perfect exposures every single time.
Now, we all understand the importance of avoiding blown out highlights, and I think it's really important to learn how to expose your photographs properly for a couple of reasons. A, because once you've learned how to do it, that's it. You know how to do it for life, done and dusted. And secondly, it means that then you can move on to more important things like composition and storytelling, telling a story with your images. Now, I say things like composition and storytelling are more important than the technical side of photography. To be completely honest with you, that's actually a bit of a lie. That doesn't make sense, because until you've mastered how to use your camera, until you understand the technical side of photography, you can't really get stuck into composition and storytelling 100%. You can't really give it all of your focus. And in today's video, I want to share with you my technique that I use to get perfect exposure every single time with my photographs, to the point where I don't really even have to think about it that much. So this first photograph that I'm taking here is actually a really good example of when we need to take real care when we're exposing a photograph. In these waterfalls here, there are a lot of bright highlights and a lot of dark shadows, and we really need to make sure that we get the histogram right here. So you can see down here in the bottom right hand corner of my LCD screen is the histogram, and this is the tool that I use to manage my exposure, to get perfect exposures every single time. And all the histogram is a graph that's showing us the brightness levels in our photograph. If it's bunched up too far to the left like this, it means the image is too dark, and you can see how the image itself does go darker. If it's bunched up too far to the right, the image is too bright and thus overexposed, and that is exactly what we don't want. And what we want to try and do as photographers is make sure that our histogram is not touching the left-hand side of the graph, and that it's not touching the right-hand side of the graph. Probably more importantly, because if you're touching that right-hand side, it means that you're overexposing your image. Now, in order to move our histogram left or right and thus adjust the exposure, we have to change one of these three values down here, either the shutter speed, the aperture, or the ISO. And you can see I can move my histogram left or right there by using the shutter speed, or with the aperture, or finally with the ISO. And that's how we can manipulate our histogram. It's that simple. So this has actually been quite a tricky little photograph to compose, just because there's so much going on. There's a lot of chaos in this little area here, but what I've decided to do is pretty much just try and capture all of it. I've stuck the wide angle lens on. I'm shooting at 14mm, and what we're getting is this really nice curve as all of the cascades smoothly make the way through all of the rest of the landscape, through all of the rocks and all of the trees. And it looks pretty cool. For my settings, I'm going for 1/4 of a second, so we get that really nice milky look in the water. F11 and ISO 250. And that is also giving us the perfect histogram. Like I said a second ago, this is a really good example because there's so many dark shadows and so many bright highlights. So I want to show you my histogram here now. So that is the completed raw file that you're seeing there. And if I just try and show you my histogram here, look how perfect that is. Like I've said, we can't touch the left-hand side, we can't touch the right-hand side. It's so close to touching, but that is the most stretched out histogram you're probably ever going to see, but perfectly exposed. Oh man, I will tell you what, it is lovely to be back out in the wonderful Lake District. We're in the summer holidays now, so it's busy here, but with a decent bit of local knowledge, I'm always able to find some nice quiet spots. So, this is so lovely and peaceful. It's wonderful. Now I wanted to make this video today about exposure and using the histogram for quite a specific reason. Now when I run my one-to-one workshops, the biggest value that people get from them in terms of one technique is learning to use the histogram. Now most people use it already, they know how to use it, and that's fine. But every now and again, somebody is intimidated by the histogram, or they've never heard of it, or they've never tried using it before. And they always get so much value from me showing them how to use it, how I use it to manage my exposures, and most of all, how easy it is. So I'm taking a second photograph here in slightly different lighting conditions, but the concept with the histogram is still exactly the same. I've got eyes on, and I'm adjusting my settings. I'm at ISO 64 f11 and 1/10 of a second, and I'm making sure that we're not clipping that left-hand side of the histogram and that we're not clipping the right-hand side of the histogram. Now I'm aware that a lot of people might not have the luxury of a live histogram on their LCD screen, and they can't see the histogram change in real time as they adjust the settings. If that's the case, use the light meter here on the right hand side, or that's where it is on my camera, and the goal is to get the line in the middle on the naught. If you're too far towards the plus, your image is going to be overexposed. If you're too far towards the minus, your image is going to be underexposed. Start on the naught, take the image, wait for it to pop up, and then check your histogram. So that's touching the right hand side, and this is where you cannot trust your light meter. So I'm deliberately having to go underexposed here. It's all about the histogram. It's so important. And there we go, perfect histogram, even though my light meter is essentially telling me I'm underexposed. You've got to always trust your histogram. Now there's one more scenario where you might have to go a little bit further than just adjusting your histogram left and right, and that is exactly what I want to talk about in a second. In fact, if there's only one technique in some crazy hypothetical world that I could keep as a landscape photographer, it would be this one. For me, it's an essential skill. But before we get into that, I'd love to say another massive thank you to today's video sponsor, which is Squarespace. Now, if you've never heard of Squarespace, they're an all-in-one platform that you can use to build your own website. And just like the histogram, don't be intimidated about that prospect of building your own website, because through Squarespace, it is so easy. They've got loads of different professional looking templates that you can use to get yourself up and running. It's a drag and drop system. You just add a little bit of text, a few images, and before you know it, you'll have a mega looking website. You can use it for a portfolio, or if you want, Squarespace offer a lot of e-commerce options as well. Now, if you don't know what that means, it just means that you can sell stuff through your Squarespace website, and they make that so easy as well. And that's what I do on my own Squarespace website, which I'm really proud of, by the way. I sell my prints, my ebooks, my one-to-one workshops, my calendars. My 2024 calendar is available to buy now, and it allows me to run my business, and it's fantastic. Now you'll notice I keep using the word easy over and over again, but that's exactly what I want to try and stress to you. Through Squarespace, it is a piece of cake. If you've had a dream to build your own website, but you're perhaps holding back because you're not mad into software, you don't see yourself sitting in front of a computer building a website, have a look at Squarespace. It is so simple to do it. And on top of everything that I've mentioned, they've got fantastic award-winning customer service. So if you need any help from them, they're always there. If you'd like to give them a go, head over to squarespace.com/Henry Turner, or hit the link in the description to get yourself a 14-day free trial. Nothing to lose. You may as well go and give it a go. And if you enjoy your free trial, make sure you use the offer code Henry Turner at checkout to get 10% off your first purchase. So I'm having one of them evenings where I'm just wandering around, really not that bothered about the photography, just enjoying the peace of it all. It's lovely, and I've stumbled across this quaint, gorgeous little chapel here on this serene evening. And you know what, I got this photograph a couple of weeks ago in Scotland, and I mean, it's probably rubbish, but I never photograph anything man-made. I don't photograph buildings. So if I hadn't got that image, I think I probably would have walked straight past this lovely little chapel here, but not this evening. I'm grabbing a little shot of it. And there's not really anything to this photograph really, except for I'm down low with the wide angle lens, trying to accentuate the building, make it look larger in the frame, and shooting at 14mm, polarizer on to bring out a little bit of detail in the sky. And that's about it. I'll tell you what's really beautiful about it. Well, I mean, I think the whole build is really nice, but the door is so attractive, and a nice little lantern just above the door as well. So yeah, would have never thought I got a shot like this. But when you have these sorts of photo walks where you're just wandering around, the photography is secondary to the experience of the evening or whatever it is. These things tend to happen. Now let's get onto this skill, the one skill that I will keep if I could only have one. For me, this is so important, and it's called bracketing. Bracketing is what you do out on location. Exposure blending is what you do in post-processing. And basically, there are so many instances as landscape photographers where it's too bright and too dark in the scene that you're photographing at the same time. And although there's no photograph in this direction, it's actually a really good example of when we need to bracket shots. Now you'll just have to imagine that this is a beautiful vista, an awe-inspiring vista in the middle of the Alps, not just a little bit of wall, my camera bag, and a random field with some sheep. But, like I said, it's a great example of when we may need to bracket out on location. And all bracketing means is you're taking one bright photograph and then one dark photograph, both of exactly the same frame, the same composition. And I'll pop this up on the screen here. This is me recording on the Z7 now, and you'll see the trees are perfectly exposed, nice and bright, but the sky is just too bright. And then if I darken it down a little bit, it's going to be completely the other way around. Probably about there. The sky to me is looking perfect, whereas the foreground, the trees, are just way too dark, and there's no way we can get that histogram perfectly balanced so it's not touching the left or touching the right, which I'll show you now. So if you just keep an eye on my live histogram there, you can see he's currently not touching the right hand side. However, he's absolutely slamming into the left hand side because the shadows are way too dark. And if I tried to brighten up the shadows to bring out detail in the trees and where it was very dark, you'd see now it's slamming into the right hand side. So you see what I mean? It's a bit of a catch-22. There's no way of balancing out this histogram. So this is where I would, like I said, bracket. That's what it's called. I'd take one image like that, which is a bit darker, perfectly exposed for the sky, and then one image a little bit brighter, something like that, which is perfectly exposed for the foreground, for the trees and wherever it was dark. And then I'd take those two files into whatever post-processing software, and then I would blend them together. So we'd have perfect exposure down here in the trees and perfect exposure up here in the sky. In fact, another good way of showing you is now on the video camera. See how it does it automatically. See how there it's exposing for the trees, but the sky's too bright. If I move up, it exposes for the sky, but the trees are too dark, which is really cool and really helpful for when I'm filming these videos. But yeah, if you look into things like exposure blending and bracketing, it's so easy. But like I said a second ago, such an important skill. You must learn it. It has just seemingly all of a sudden got really dark, so I'm glad to leave the little church behind in the graveyard. As nice as it was, it's not so nice in the dark. And as I move on, I wanted to ask you a question actually about exposure blending and bracketing. I suppose I'm asking people that are competent with it, you know, you understand the histogram and you understand everything about exposure blending and stuff. Basically, I don't really do it that much anymore. I think I used to do it a lot, pretty much all the time, and now I think I only really exposure blend if I'm shooting directly into the sun. Admittedly, I think a lot of it is down to the fact I've got a really good camera. The Nikon Z7 has got fantastic dynamic range capabilities, but yeah, I just wondered if anyone else is like that. I think I'm more happy now to just lift shadows in post-production and just be done with it, which is probably a bit daft because we're shooting digital, aren't we? You may as well just take a brighter photograph as well. I don't know, but yeah, comment below. I'd find that quite interesting. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate your support. Please hit the thumbs up button if you could spare me one quick second. And of course, hit the subscribe button if you're new. Thanks a lot for your support, and I'll see you on the next adventure. Out.